Hi, this is Gary Collins, co-host of the Primal Show and creator of the Primal Power Method. We are here today with Alessandra Hall, the creator, founder of Life in Focus, and she is also a psychologist and also the owner of CrossFit Elysium here in San Diego with her husband, Dr. Leon Chang, and also my co-host here, can't forget him in the black hat and black nice shirt matching me.
Yeah, right?
Heath Squier, CEO of Julian Bakery. And today we wanted to talk with Alessandra about her practice and some of her life coaching and her experience with paleo and the primal lifestyle and how she found her way and now how she teaches other people the lifestyle and some of her tips for all of us on how to do it better and get on the right track. So thanks for being here today, Alessandra.
Hey, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, would you, just for people who are unfamiliar, would you briefly describe how you found paleo and the primal lifestyle and kind of the evolution that you've gone through?
Sure. I have like the vainest story, so it works very well. I've been paleo for about 5.5 years at this point. After having my first child, I put on a whole bunch of weight, and I'm one of those people who's been fairly lucky in her life. I had never dieted a day in my life. I had discovered CrossFit right before getting pregnant and then stopped the second I found out, 4 months into my pregnancy. So put on 40 plus pounds of weight, all in peanut butter Captain Crunch.
Nice.
And started CrossFitting again after having my son Luca. And there was just a bunch of weight, 20 pounds or so, that would not drop. So I finally gave in. I did the zone for a month. It was awful. And then it did nothing for me, I should say. And then relented and gave in to paleo. And I was very reluctant to do so because I grew up in France. My father's from the Midwest, and by blood, I'm half Italian. So grains are a huge, 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 huge part of my life. I mean, I've been baking since I was a little girl, had baking businesses as a kid, thriving baking businesses as a kid. So I was just going to do it for a month or two, lose the weight, and then get back to my regular lifestyle. And unfortunately, is the way I like to put it when I talk about this, it worked. It worked really well. So not only did I drop some of the weight, and for mothers who work out and breastfeed, I didn't drop all of the weight until I stopped breastfeeding. I think my body just needed to hold on to a bunch of fat so that I could continue producing milk, which is fine. Right. But I did lose a bunch of the weight, and then there were all these other beneficial side effects. My energy went up, my skin cleared up. I have had a bad knee for years, and my joint pain went away. Working out also helped, but that's down the road, strengthening the muscles. Sex drive went up, which is always a good thing right after having a baby. And generally speaking, then as I started to understand the science behind it, it was very hard to try to go back to eating the way I used to.
Sure.
And it took it's interesting, it took Leon and I about 2 months before we realized it was a lifestyle and not a diet, and until we switched our son to it too. Oh, wow. So while we were both jumping on the paleo wagon and changing our lifestyle, we were feeding him rice cereal and these basic things, and then switched him over pretty rapidly.
Well, I think a lot of us have a very similar story, in the sense that we all were dabbling, and I think Heath and me are like you. I know, at least for myself, I never was a dieter. I didn't know. I experimented with diets because my friends or family were doing it, and I wanted to know what they were doing, so I'd play with it to see what it was, and then go, oh my God, that's absolutely miserable. Why would anyone ever do that?
Right.
And, and I'd do it for like 7 days. It wasn't even very long. And, the same way I kind of fell into a cleanse to try and detox my body, which evolved into kind of the ancestral health side, which then turned into paleo, then turned into primal. It was this whole long evolution of figuring it out. But once I figured it out, I was like, I'm not going back. And you can't. And that's the thing that I think people are skeptical about too, or scared. I know my friends are and family that I deal with. That's the hardest side. Dealing with people one-on-one is one thing, but dealing with your family and friends is a whole other issue if you work as a practitioner. People don't understand the dichotomy of what works for clients and what you tell them, your family just never listens to.
No, of course they don't.
Yeah, they go, oh, I grew up, I changed your diapers. I remember you doing this, digging a hole in the front yard. You can't know anything about health. And so you kind of go through that, but people realize that, yeah, once you get into it, it's totally life-changing. And it changes not only your health, but then your whole lifestyle changes. Everything around it starts to change. The way you live, the way you look at everything.
It does. And sorry, I was going to say it does. And I think it's the difference between people who go back to, the standard American diet and people who stick with it, I think is the difference between people who understand why they're doing what they do and people who are just following it as a weight loss diet. Once you understand even some of the basic science without going into big details about it, it's very hard to justify doing that to your body.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree. And in fact, as a company, I mean, I grew up like yourself, always in the bakery, always eating whole grain, and doing a kind of growing up on no fat and grains, and I had joint problems also. And not until I eliminated the grains did that pain go away. Like I had pain in my knee. So by going paleo, this whole anti-inflammatory approach, my whole body felt great. And as a company, we were making all these different grain-based spreads. I said, you know what, we can't make these anymore. I just don't feel right about it. So as of this year, our whole bakery is now grain-free.
Wow.
Every single product, and we dumped every single product that we had and are all in about paleo because it's what I really believe. I know it works, and not all of our customers were thrilled about it. They really miss these grains, but at the same time, I felt it appropriate to start educating people about the importance of going grain-free because it's so inflammatory. And it made such a huge difference in my life that if I can only help some people feel as good as I feel every day, then I know that I just would feel so much better about that. I mean, there's so many people that are struggling, and a lot of it has to do with grains. I mean, it's just so saturated in everything that's out there on the market. So I'm with you.
And not only that, but you got rid of, to put it in perspective, and I think people don't understand this, is you got rid of highly profitable products.
Right.
That have been in the business for decades.
Yeah.
And people are getting, the transition and how, Julian Bakery and how it's transitioned into paleo, and understanding that a lot of the products that we deal with are cutting edge too, and it's hard. I mean, people look at it and they just think that, oh, you're a bakery, whatever. They don't see the whole side of it, the business side, and how hard it is to transition. And that's a whole nother issue, is how grains are so saturated in the marketplace as far as a company, and trying to get away from grains in a company and to produce products that are grain-free, healthy. It is really, really hard. It is not easy.
And expensive.
Yes.
And expensive, yeah.
Very expensive.
Yeah, very expensive. And just having the ability to get the raw ingredients. I mean, we know is ingredients will go away. On the healthy side, as far as some of the almond flours and coconut flours, all of a sudden someone will just go out of business and they're gone. On the grain side, you always got 15 different people you can go source from at any given time.
Well,
so
it's easy when things are subsidized a bit more. So
isn't it amazing how that works? How
grain is so cheap, it's ridiculous. I mean, but at the same time, it's just so important, and I'm so passionate about educating people about the benefits of going grain-free, and you're living proof. I mean, somebody that has seen the firsthand benefit of going grain-free and being free from their pain. I had a herniated L5-S1, and I'm pain-free now every day. I don't have any pain whatsoever because of the way I eat. And I'm living proof, and it was a major herniation. So I was on the ground on my back for over a month, and now I have no pain. So,
as somebody who lifts, I mean, through the gym, and just a correction, I'm not the co-owner of CrossFit Elysium. I am their executive director.
There you go. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Okay.
And Paul Estrada, the co-owner.
Yeah.
To give credit where credit is due on that one.
Sure.
I'm the woman behind the scenes.
That's right. I've met Paul, so I should know better.
But if we go and we indulge in a really nice meal, and there's a specific restaurant in Las Vegas that has amazing bread, I think I would go there just to eat bread and drink wine if I could, if it were financially reasonable to do so. But I know the next day, immediately I'll feel my knee hurt, I'll feel my joints hurt. So that's the other thing. Once you make a transition and the transition is complete, those transgressions become very noticeable. It's not, I don't believe that for most people, being 100% paleo is realistic or desirable, right? I'm really somebody who believes in the importance of making changes that fit with who you are, because if you don't do that, you're not going to be able to sustain the change over time. And that's the big issue, right? That's the big word right now, being able to sustain change. So if that means that most of the time you're eating very well, and once in a while I don't know, Thanksgiving just came up, or you go to a great restaurant or something comes up, and you don't sweat the small stuff, you don't stress out over making a choice because you understand that choice. It's not reactive and it's not mindless. Then I think people are doing fine. It took me 3 years to fully make a transition. And what I mean by that is it took 3 years before certain foods that were once enticing suddenly weren't palatable at all. If you offered me a Snickers bar, it just wouldn't go down. And whereas the first 2 years, I would have said oh my goodness, that would be wonderful. That would be a really nice treat. I have no desire to eat any of those things, but it took a while. And it took doing really well and then falling back a little bit and doing really well and falling back. The falling back was never a complete relapse into old eating habits, but they were these slips that were then met with negative consequences. That's my dog dreaming down there. I don't know if you're growling.
That's right. My dog's right here too. He's passed out though.
He's passed out too. I don't know what he's dreaming about, but so I think that's a really important message when we do talk to people who are making these changes, that it's a process, and the process is not a 3-month or a 6-month process. It's years. So one of the big things I preach about is I talk about that connection between the things we do and the emotions we have, right? The things we do and the assumptions or the memories we have, and understanding that making any big lifestyle change is going to be accompanied by some level of grief. And that's especially true with food.
For sure.
Yes.
Right?
It's almost like burying a loved one. I mean, honestly, really, because you are completely taking something out that you have used as a crutch for decades. I mean, basically your whole life, because as people, as creatures that we are, we look at food as comfort. We look at it as an addiction today. It's truly an addiction. And yeah, pulling those things out, and I think that's why me and you get along so well, Alessandra, you and your husband, we talk about this stuff all the time, is dealing with that side too. And I'm the same way. It took about 3.5 years for everything to kind of shake out to where I went, okay, I think I get it now. And for the really, really bad physical conditions to go away, such as, my horrible seasonal allergies that I had all my life that were, debilitating to the point where I couldn't function in certain parts of the country or certain seasons. I was just done. I knew 6 months out of the year in a certain place, I was going to be miserable. And that stuff went away. It wasn't overnight. It was each allergy season I noticed got better. And then all of a sudden on that third year, I was like, wow, I'm not sneezing. My eyes aren't, all bloodshot, and my nose isn't right. What's going on? Now I can be around cats. I couldn't get in a room with a cat. I would literally my eyes would swell up, and all that changes, and understanding that people want this, boom, instant gratification. And once they don't get it, they go back to their crutch. They go right back to the old style because it makes them feel good.
Well, and I find this in my office, both in my practice as a psychologist, but also in coaching, is that it's not just that people want instant gratification, which is a huge piece, right? People want the silver bullet, but it's that people get really discouraged when they've worked hard to make a change and they experience that first slip, and their minds move into this all or nothing way of thinking, where suddenly they tell themselves, well, I just can't do this, or this doesn't work for me, instead of realizing, again, it's a process. And I talk about grief in terms of identity I mean, giving up all the traditions around holidays. I used to make candy. We used to make candy from scratch every Christmas.
Yeah.
I mean, I have pictures of me at 2 doing it, right? So my whole life, I would make these boxes of homemade candy, and we'd give out candy. And suddenly, there's this huge traditional piece that's gone. I was really good at baking, and I was good at making gnocchi from scratch, and these are foods I don't make anymore. So suddenly, I'm not really as good a cook as I used to be, because the things that I had perfected for years are no longer part of my recipe repertoire, and it's my identity, my culture gets shifted. And the paleo community does a really good job. And I think this is why we can move from diet to lifestyle, because we have a community and we create a new identity and we create a new culture. And that helps us transition through that grief a little faster.
Well, it's a social network. What it does is it brings in, what you're doing is you're replacing your own family with, not, I shouldn't say completely replacing, but it's part of it, because I talk about social circles, and some of that too is that shifts. As you start to change your diet, the people you used to hang out with who were not necessarily a good influence in certain areas, you now have to have, and you don't want to get rid of them. I don't want to get rid of my best friends because they don't eat like I do. But I have to have another group to supplement that in order for me to be successful in what I want to do far as the health side. So, because if you do it on your own, it becomes very difficult too. So that's what paleo does a very good job of, in CrossFit as well, is it creates this whole separate community that you can become involved in. And you go to a CrossFit box and it's like you walk in and everyone's on the same page.
Right.
And it's
You're
like,
not a weirdo.
Yeah, you're not this strange goofball. And matter of fact, there's people way weirder than you, and they're doing way different things. And that's the great part about it. And you go there for an hour or two and you escape. You get to get in your own little group. You all talk about what you're cooking, eating, lifting that day. And then you can go back to your family. But it gives you that place to go. Mm-hmm. And that the CrossFit box's hours are usually open depending where you're at. You know, you can just walk in one day and do your own exercise, do your own, but it's your getaway. It's still that place you can go. And I think that's really, really important, is that some people think that they have to give up everything and that there's no kind of support group, I guess is the best way to put it. But there is now. And that's what paleo does a good job of. When you look at the other diets, you know, such as maybe Atkins or, you know, the beach diet, all that stuff, there's no support group. It's just a diet.
Right.
You know, so you just go in there and you're in there to lose weight, and then you're off. You're off back into your own world again. And that's a huge part of the failure side, is you're in and out. And instead of bringing it into your lifestyle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why I actually designed like our transitional like paleo diet foods, is to help keep people on track. And you know, there's a lot of paleo people like preaching such a strict paleo way of eating, but you know, there's all these great recipes that are on the internet. There's our products which help you transition from a mainstream paleo diet to you know, helping you stick on the proper path, because so many people are like, this is too hard, I'm done, I can't do this. And through providing products like paleo wraps and bread and all the different things that we make, I think it really helps keep people on track. And I really made all these products just to help keep myself on track.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason why most of us, when we first transitioned, we were trying to think of ways to paleofy everything we made. And there was a lot of baking going on, and there's 5 years later, there's much less. It just doesn't matter anymore. Your palate gets redefined, what seems satisfying gets redefined. But in the beginning, again, and this is true with any change, but it has to match who you are. So if you're asking yourself to do something perfectly, because that's what the experts say, that's what the textbooks say, it's, for most people, it's not going to work. So you use that as a template. And I recommend with people, when I do nutrition coaching, that we try that for a month or so, because I do like the idea of that kind of month of clean eating, restart your system. And then at the end of the month and throughout that month, we'll talk about, how does this feel? What do you miss the most? What's going on in your head? You know, what are the things you're sad about? And then at the end of the month, we look at, okay, how can you live this for the next 50 years?
Right.
Can you live it at this level of perfection? That's wonderful, fantastic. I can't do it. let me change that. If you paid me enough money, I probably could. If you told me I would lose my children, of course I could. I don't want to. I just, that's not how I want to live. But can I do it at 90%, at 80%? Yeah. And my 90 and 80 for me doesn't look like, oh, on weekends I cheat, or every day I allow 20% of the things I eat or 10% of the things I eat to be unhealthy. It's if I'm in Vegas and I get to go to the Joël Robuchon restaurant, I am going to eat their bread.
Yeah.
If I get a good glass of wine, I'm going to drink that glass of wine. And I love apple pie. And so, you know, if there's a good apple pie or an amazing bread pudding somewhere, I'll eat it. If it tastes like crap, I put it down. There's the sugar junkie is dead in me.
Sure.
I don't need to continue eating something that's not tasty.
And you're lucky. If I have bread, I like literally pass out. I have a wheat allergy, so I'm actually paleo by not only choice, but because I have to be, because this is the only way I can eat and feel good all the time.
Right.
But I've learned to make the best out of it, and it's just, yeah, it's kind of different. I wish I could enjoy bread again.
You know,
Right.
I'm not
am
as
lucky.
bad. I'm the same way as Heath, and that's the thing too, is wheat gets me, but I can eat all the other breads pretty much no problem, other grain breads, but I don't. I mean, if I eat them continuously, then everything starts to flare up again. It's usually like a 3-day window. I tell people, if I do something for 3 days that I shouldn't be doing, by the third day, it's hitting and I'm not feeling really good. I can get away with it for a meal, and understanding that, you know, I talked about this on my blog about Thanksgiving. That's one of my no bars whole day. I go bonkers. I'll eat whatever I want. I don't care. That's my favorite holiday of the year. I'm not giving that up. And, you know, my friends laugh at me because they just watch me gorge myself silly, you know, belly all out, passed out on the couch, wake up, and then I pound more food, and then I'm done, you know, and then that's it. I'm over. And it's even last night. I mean, that's a perfect example is, you know, me and my buddy got season tickets to the San Diego State Aztecs for basketball, and we have a tradition. We go, we sit in the parking lot, we have some beers, definitely not paleo or Primal.
Well, that's crazy.
Yeah, and then, you know, our usual light beer that we drink in college, or, you know, we relive our days. And last night we decided to have some chicharrones, or chicharrones, or whatever you know, it's fried pork pork rinds.
Tastiness.
Yeah, and anyone who knows pork rinds know those are just highly addicting and awful for you because they're all mainly highly processed. I've looked for healthy ones. They don't exist. And that's what we're talking about. I don't know if I'm coming down with what's going around, or like I said, I woke up, my ears are plugged.
It's definitely those.
And, you know, and I had a headache, and I'm like, oh, Lord. You know, but I'm going to live. I mean, you know, hopefully in the next couple hours it'll go away, or today. But that's a reminder to me of just that little bit. And I didn't have like 20 beers. I had like 3 beers, and they're light beers. They weren't heavily grained, but definitely not healthy. And I'm paying the price today.
Yeah.
And it's just, that is what keeps me on track, is when I go off track, it really screws me up depending on what I do. And it's, you know, but for one day, my body can handle that. It can detox. It can figure it out. But if I was to do it again tonight, tomorrow would be absolute misery. I would be shot. And yeah.
Well, and you see the impact, right? We were talking about this a little earlier before we started recording, but you see the impact of that on mood.
Yeah.
Right. So, but and of course it makes sense. You don't need to have been depressed or have anxiety to know that when your body feels like crap, you feel like crap mentally or emotionally.
Yeah.
But you carry that over a certain period of time, and when you work with people who say, like, I'll address anxiety in a second, depression's an easier one for the food piece, and suddenly you get them to clean their body up and to eat better, and their body feels better and their brain can function, and suddenly they can start thinking clearly. And what I mean by thinking clearly is that their thinking becomes more balanced. You see elements of that depressive thinking disappear.
Yeah.
And then the habits, right? So you have more energy, you have more motivation. The more you're outside in the world, the more you're experiencing the world in a pleasant way, the more your state of mind can again become objective. The things that are supposed to bother you. The things that aren't supposed to bother you stop bothering you. And you have balance. You have better mental health. With anxiety, what I'm finding is a lot of the people, yes, the same principle applies, but people who are really stressed and anxious, it's the lifestyle piece of paleo that I drive again and again and again.
Okay.
So eating is a great part of this whole change or shift, but some of the bigger and in many ways equally valuable, I was going to say more, but they're not more valuable, changes have been lifestyle. Things like going to bed earlier,
Sure.
Limiting light pollution in the evenings, being way more mindful of my general stress level. And I beat people over the head with that day in, day out. Stop, check in, ask yourself what's stressing you out, because what most people try to do with stress is cover it up and ignore it, right? So we live these chronically stressful lives. We come home, we acknowledge that we feel stressed, then we try to cover that stress up with substances, whether it's food or alcohol or weed or whatever else people are, or cigarettes or anything like that. And then whatever you can't cover up with that, you try to cover up with activities. So people will zone out in front of TV, they'll relax playing video games. But all of that is just about kind of avoiding and ignoring the stress response, rather than saying, well, you know what? I'm waking up chronically tired every morning instead of pounding a bunch of coffee, and I love coffee. But instead of pounding a bunch of coffee, maybe I should be going to bed earlier. Maybe I should be doing something else. I feel like I need a glass of wine every night to unwind. That's probably a bad sign. What is it that I'm unwinding from, and what else can I do to manage that stress?
Yeah.
And the paleo lifestyle, I think the primal lifestyle, really teaches you to become aware of how your environment and how your actions impact you. And that's informed everything I do at this point.
Yeah, that's really great advice. In fact, today I was reading that the new cure for depression, they're giving people ketamine in a medical office, allowing them to trip for curing depression. And they say after a couple of treatments, all of a sudden everybody's, feeling great. It's like, we're so over medicating, and why can't it start with diet or lifestyle changes? Instead, it's like, what's the next drug we can give these people?
Because there's no money in it. That's the thing. We've talked about this. There is no money in the health industry for healthy people. Yeah. And, I know this personally. I worked in the drug industry, obviously with the FDA, and it opened my eyes to a whole world that I knew it wasn't good. But once I got in and started dealing with these drug companies, I just realized it was just the root of pure evil. They're really, not to say that all pharmaceutical drugs are wrong, because there are certain conditions that, hey, thank God for modern medicine. I never would ever say get rid of modern medicine. That is just kind of idiotic to me. I don't want to have to go out and dig a hole and forge for a root for everything ailment out there, because I don't think that's realistic. But you should go there first if you can. But yeah, with the mental aspect of that and talking, and this is personal to me too, and me and Heath have talked about this. I come from long generations of depression. And is it genetic, or is it lifestyle? Is it a combination? I don't know. And that's the thing. No one knows. And that's why I never tell people that, just go paleo and your depression will completely go away. I've heard some of these people in the paleo world say that and write about it. I go, you are completely misinformed and pretty stupid to say something like that. But it does help. I'm not going to argue that, hey, heck yeah, it helps, but I'm not going to tell you it's going to cure you. Sure, it probably cures some people. But, for me, I noticed that, did the depression go away? No. I still battle it. But it gave me a better ability to recognize it and to deal with it.
Yeah.
So now I have the coping mechanisms to not get lost in it. And I think that's the best thing that people can take away from it. Because I think almost the studies say, and you probably are more in touch with this, Alessandra, is almost everyone's depressed today. For the most part, as far as Americans, a huge majority of Americans are suffering from depression.
Well, it depends how you define it. Like clinical depression, no. Yeah, I think we're walking around in an overstressed society, and people have this. I'm going to write about this soon, not in a book. I need to write an article for somebody about this. But there's this assumption that when you grow up, you're just supposed to feel kind of crappy, tired, and overwhelmed, which is not true. And I agree with you. Like, I have nothing against modern medicine, honestly. There's a time and a place for antidepressant medication. There's a time and a place for anti-anxiety medication. There's a time and a place for blood pressure or cholesterol meds. You know, there just is a time and a place. The problem that I see is that we treat symptoms and we don't treat underlying problems. And so what shifting into this culture and this mindset of the paleo and the primal world does is it teaches people to start thinking about treating underlying issues and not just trying to address one symptom after another. And if you then apply that to whatever you're dealing with in terms of emotional health, it makes a huge difference. So if I'm stressed, if I feel anxious, the solution is not just to medicate it with food or TV or alcohol, but the solution becomes, well, what in my life is making me stressed and what can I do that? And then that's something that becomes, I think, a natural progression when you're involved in living a primal life, because you start looking at things very, very differently.
Well, and that's a good point, is recognizing the stressors. I think that's one of the biggest points for people that will struggle with, and I've dealt with clients, is recognizing it, because our everyday lifestyle is ingrained in us as Americans today, that these are the things that we're supposed to deal with. And like you said, no, that is not true. And focusing that time away from those stressors into something positive and something else. What is that something else for someone? I don't know. I always tell people, find something you enjoy and focus in on that. And I think that's what's happening in a lot of the community as far as paleo, primal, and self-sufficiency. It's creating a lot of entrepreneurs, because they go through this lifestyle change and they go, okay, working in this cubicle, that's not it. How do I turn what I've learned into a business? And people are starting to recognize that there's a lot of aspects to living this lifestyle that can give you that entrepreneurial spirit to create something for other people. And that's traditionally what we did as cultures, is we provided services to other people or other tribes in order to exchange, in order for us to survive or thrive. And it was all things that we needed. It wasn't things that were arbitrary that were going to stress us out that we don't need. You know, do you need social media? Probably not. But do you want to get rid of it as a whole? I don't know about that either. I don't know. Yeah, it's fun. You can stay in touch with your friends and family. You know, there's good aspects to it. But sitting in front of your computer for 4 hours, you know, stressing out whether your friends are gonna, you know, tag you in a photo or invite you to their friend's party and you didn't get the invite. That stuff it's not worth it. It's just not worth stressing over. And, you know, like me, I got rid of listening to talk radio and watching certain news networks. I don't watch any news anymore, to be honest with you. I very rarely will even go to a news channel. That was hard. I mean, I was in the military. I was in the government for decades, and that was my lifestyle. I was in tune with everything that was going on in the world. That was what I knew. Yeah. To break free from that, it was stressing me out. It made me negative. I couldn't take it. And once I removed that this year, I noticed a whole lot of stressors went away, and I slept better. I felt better. I wasn't so crabby and cranky. And that's what I'm talking about. What I replaced that with? Well, other things. I just found other things to do to replace that, and more positive. And that's the hardest part, I think, for people, is recognizing what those negative stressors are. I mean, look how long it took me to figure that one out. You know, it took a long time.
Can you walk us through, like, somebody maybe you've helped coach that has embraced the paleo diet and a primal way of living, and kind of walk us through, and from a generic point of view, just somebody
maybe even point out some of the stressors that they go through and having you help them pinpoint them and eliminate them.
Somebody that you've seen, you know, really change because of the way of this style of living and eating.
Well, I go back. I tend to think about the members of the gym generally when that comes. I don't know if honestly, like, when you ask that question, it seems really huge to me.
Sure.
So if you want specifically, like, I might find somebody who will come to me and they will start off talking about just wanting to lose weight, right? They have extra padding, is the way we'll put it, extra fat that they need to lose. And one of the first things we'll do is talk about, what's the point? Right. So again, I want them to move away from thinking about the symptoms and to understand what's the underlying value. I want to lose weight. Why? Do you want to be healthier? Do you want to be able to run up a set of stairs? Do you want to lift something bigger? If they start giving me clothing goals, I never kind of dismiss those necessarily. But again, it's going to be like, well, why is it important to be able to fit in a size 8 pair of pants, right? What does it mean? And so that's a big question that we come back to when you talk about identifying stressors and identifying the kind of things that are going to be roadblocks that I focus on. The question, what does that mean to or for you, is a really important aspect of making a change, so that then based on what it means for them, we can set dietary goals. Again, I'm usually going to start off recommending that somebody do like strict paleo for a while. If they're really resistant, I'll say just do it for 2 weeks. And then at the end of the 2 weeks, do it for 2 weeks more, right? We'll try to get a full month in. And as they're going through that month, we'll talk about how are you doing? What's going on? What's standing in your way? When somebody comes to me and they say they're struggling, let's say they go out with friends and they give in, or they're late night feeders, right? And we've talked about you need to empty your house, make your house a safe place. That's an easy thing to do. At least make your home safe, so that you don't have to think. And they don't do it. I'm going to look at 2 things. One is the behavior that you're maintaining. What does it mean to you? Why, when you think about it, what are all the associations, emotional, historical associations you have with it? And that's going to give us an idea of why they want to do what they're doing, right? And then we're going to look at, well, how about the behavior we're trying to implement, which might be in this case throwing away a whole bunch of food and emptying their pantries and having a clean household. What are all the associations? And what you'll find is a mixture of positive and negative, right? There's a hopefulness that comes with I'm going to be healthy. I'm going to be a lot less anxious because I'm not going to have to stress about these things. I will have made a right decision. I'll be successful. And then there are all the negative ones. What am I going to do when I get stressed? What am I going to do when I'm hungry late at night? I really, really love Oreos. I love my Friday. This is a big thing in the States. I did not grow up in the States. So like Friday night pizza seems to be this universal thing, right? So what am I supposed to eat on Friday nights? Because Friday nights was pizza night with my family. And using those 2 categories of things, kind of what are your associations? What are your ties to the behavior you're currently doing, the one we want to get rid of? And what are your ties to the behavior we're trying to implement? What are your associations with them? We can then create goals or steps that don't just take into account like situational or strategic factors, but take into account personal factors. So that, I think a lot of what you get and a lot of what people get is, hey, you want to get from point A to point B? To get to point B, these are the things you need to do. And on a strategic level, that makes a lot of sense. You want to eat healthier? Well, get your house to be a clean house. Make sure that when you go out, you look over a menu in advance and you decide what you want to do. We have all that strategy. But then nobody stops to think about, well, how does that apply to me? Maybe going to the restaurant and deciding in advance what I want to eat will be super, super easy. But again, giving up Friday night pizza is the hardest thing in the world. And if I don't understand why that is, I'm going to continue failing at one of those steps, and I'm not going to be able to make that full transition. So a lot of what I recommend people do is when you're getting stuck, instead of sitting there and saying, well, I can't do this, stop for a second and say, what is it about this thing I'm trying to do, this situation that's making me feel the way I'm feeling, anxious or sad or upset or frustrated? And you're going to get a whole set of things, and these things are actually thoughts. They're your assumptions about a certain situation. And those thoughts are going to guide you. They're going to help you decide how I need to approach this. Suddenly you're going to realize, oh, I never even thought about it, but I have this huge emotional tie to this event. And so in the process of giving up, I'm going to use a Friday night pizza, I really have to acknowledge that there's a grieving piece. And I have to think about that.
Yeah.
And I have to look at maybe implementing another Friday night tradition, not just giving something up altogether. And that's where, in that transitional phase, we might say, hey, I have a really good, paleo pizza,
Exactly.
paleo pizza dough that you could, try out.
We do. We definitely have the best.
So
Yeah.
those are ways in which I think it's really important to start looking at what's the underlying factor. This isn't just about strategy, and it isn't just about having a template to do something.
Yeah, no, that's really great advice, and I think so many people need to look at why it is that they want to lose weight in the first place. What are they trying to achieve, and then setting up a strategy. Hey, I see
We got Leon in the background.
I see you.
It's okay.
But well, that I think this is awesome. I think we covered some really great things today. I think there's a lot to take away here, and we want to thank you so much for coming on the show. And we will put links in the description of this video to all your sites. And
thank you.
And we really want to thank you for coming on. I think this is a real eye opener for a lot of people. And thank you.
Well, it's nice to have someone with your background on the paleo side, because it's I think you just hit everything on the head on what you said there, is the psychological aspects to change.
Yeah.
And it's huge. And people don't usually put those two with paleo, because I don't think there's enough people with your background in paleo yet. It's getting better and better.
Mm-hmm, it is.
But I think the two go together so well, as far as your background and the paleo and primal lifestyle, that you explained it very eloquently and very well, understanding people, the grieving process, and understanding, that it's not about what you can't do, it's what you can do within that change.
Yeah.
I think that's the thing that people need to take out of it is, it's not that you can't have pizza ever again, you just got to have a different pizza. That's all.
Right. And there's a way of learning to think about that, and I'm going to plug myself just a little bit, if it's okay, but I was going to say, like, one of the services I have that I offer right now is either an e-course or workshop format, but that's exactly what it does. It asks somebody, if there's a specific behavioral change that you're trying to make and you're stuck for a while, why not learn to look at it and understand what your personal roadblocks are? So understanding the cognitive and the emotional things that are getting in your way, so that then you can create an individualized plan of action. And get unstuck, because that's the big word, right? Everybody just gets stuck at certain points in time.
So your website is lifeinfocussandiego.com.
That's the therapy website. This stuff is on lifeinfocussd.com.
Okay, perfect. And now, do you cancel people nationwide or worldwide?
With the coaching, yep.
Okay, great.
We're national and international. So
awesome. Well, I hope a lot of people reach out to you. We will definitely promote this all over the place, because we want people to be healthy, and that's what we're all about here on the show. So
yep. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, and we will talk to you soon.
Thanks.
Thanks.
All right.